When Mike Trout walked into Angel Stadium at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night, desperate to break out of the worst hitting slump of his career, he never expected to encounter the ghost of baseball's greatest legend, offering to teach him secrets that had been buried for nearly a century. The 2024 season had been a nightmare for Trout. After years of being called baseball's best player, he was hitting .198 with only 12 home runs through August. Sports analysts were questioning whether injuries had permanently diminished his abilities. Fans who once cheered his every at-bat now booed when he struck out with runners in scoring position. What Trout didn't know was that his struggles had attracted the attention of someone who understood pressure better than anyone who had ever played the game. The stadium was eerily quiet as Trout made his way to the batting cages beneath the stands. Security had given him after-hours access, a privilege that came with being the franchise's cornerstone player. The fluorescent lights flickered as he set up his equipment, casting long shadows across the empty facility. He had been taking practice swings for about 20 minutes when he first heard it, the unmistakable crack of a bat connecting with a baseball. But that was impossible. He was alone in the stadium. Trout paused, listening carefully. The sound came again, followed by what sounded like a ball hitting the backstop with tremendous force. He followed the noise toward the main field, his cleats echoing off the concrete corridors. Little did he know that what he was about to witness would challenge everything he thought he understood about baseball and reality itself. As Trout emerged from the tunnel onto the field, he stopped dead in his tracks. There, in the batter's box, under the stadium lights that somehow had turned themselves on, stood a figure in a vintage uniform. The man was heavyset, wearing the pinstripe jersey and knickers of a 1920s ball player, and he was taking practice swings with a bat that looked impossibly thick by modern standards. The stranger turned toward Trout, and what Mike saw made his blood run cold. The face was unmistakable. He had seen it on countless baseball cards, posters, and history books. It was Babe Ruth, exactly as he had appeared during his legendary career, except for one terrifying detail. Mike could see right through him. "Don't look so scared, kid," the ghost said with Ruth's famous grin and unmistakable New York accent. "I've been watching you struggle for months. Figured it was time to give you some help." Trout's rational mind screamed that this was impossible. Stress-induced hallucination, mental breakdown, anything but what his eyes were telling him. But something about the figure's presence felt undeniably real. What the ghost of Babe Ruth told him next would either save Mike Trout's career or convince him that he had completely lost his mind. "You've forgotten how to play baseball, kid," Ruth said, tossing the phantom ball up and catching it effortlessly. "All these fancy stats and computer analysis, you've lost the soul of the game. That's why I'm here, to teach you what they can't measure on their charts." But what Trout couldn't have anticipated was that accepting help from baseball's greatest ghost would come with consequences that extended far beyond his batting average. For the first 15 minutes, Mike Trout was convinced he was having a complete mental breakdown. He closed his eyes, shook his head, even pinched himself. But when he opened them, Babe Ruth's ghost was still there, casually taking practice swings as if haunting baseball stadiums was perfectly normal. "This isn't real," Trout muttered, backing away from the batter's box. "Ghosts don't exist. I'm stressed about my performance and I'm hallucinating." Ruth chuckled, a sound that seemed to echo from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Kid, you think I'd waste my afterlife on someone who wasn't worth helping? I've been watching baseball for almost 100 years since I died. Most players today are so focused on launch angles and exit velocity, they've forgotten that baseball is played with the heart." What Ruth demonstrated next would convince Trout that this encounter was more real than anything he'd experienced in years. The ghost stepped into the batter's box and called out to the empty stadium, "High fastball, outside corner." Suddenly,
As if thrown by invisible hands, a baseball materialized in the air and streaked toward home plate at exactly the location Ruth had predicted. With a swing that looked almost lazy, Ruth connected, sending the phantom ball soaring over the center field wall and into the darkness beyond. "How did you—" Trout started, but Ruth was already calling his next pitch. Curveball, low and away. Again, the ball appeared and broke perfectly as Ruth had described. This time, Ruth turned on the pitch and drove it deep into the left field seats. The ghost turned to Trout with a satisfied expression. "You see, kid, it's not about seeing the ball. It's about feeling where it's going to be. That's what I'm here to teach you. The difference between hitting and becoming one with the pitch." Little did Trout realize that word of his late-night stadium visits had already reached Angels management, and they were growing concerned about their star player's mental state. Over the next 2 weeks, Ruth appeared to Trout every night after the team's games. The ghost taught him techniques that no modern hitting coach had ever mentioned: how to read a pitcher's breathing pattern, how to feel the trajectory of a pitch before it left the mound, how to swing not just with his muscles, but with his entire spirit. "Modern players think too much," Ruth explained during one session. "You're all up here." He tapped his translucent temple. "When you should be here." He pointed to his chest. "Baseball isn't played with computers, kid. It's played with passion." What Trout didn't know was that his teammates had started noticing his dramatic improvement and his strange habit of talking to empty air during batting practice. Angels manager Phil Nevin pulled Trout aside after a particularly strong game where he'd gone 3 for 4 with 2 home runs. "Mike, the guys are worried about you. You've been talking to yourself a lot lately. In the cage, on the field. Are you okay?" Trout looked at his manager, knowing that the truth would sound insane. But what he was about to discover was that some secrets are too dangerous to keep, even from the people trying to help you. The ghost of Babe Ruth was about to teach him the most important lesson of all, and it had nothing to do with baseball. The breaking point came during a nationally televised game against the Yankees in late September. Mike Trout was having the best month of his career since Ruth's ghost had begun coaching him. 12 home runs, 30 RBIs, and a batting average that had climbed back to .312. But what should have been a celebration of his comeback was about to become a public relations nightmare. In the 7th inning, with the Angels trailing by 2 runs and runners on first and second, Trout stepped into the batter's box. As he'd grown accustomed to doing, he glanced toward the Angels' dugout, where Babe Ruth's ghost usually appeared to offer last-minute advice. There was Ruth, clear as day to Trout's eyes, gesturing toward right field and mouthing, "Slider, belt high." But what Trout had forgotten, in his excitement about the pitch call, was that to everyone else in the stadium, including the television cameras, it looked like he was having an animated conversation with thin air. What happened next would be replayed on sports shows for weeks. Trout nodded to the empty space, pointed his bat toward right field exactly where Ruth had gestured, and then launched the slider into the upper deck for a 3-run homer that won the game. As he rounded the bases, he tipped his cap not to the cheering crowd, but to the dugout where Ruth's ghost was applauding. The announcers were baffled. Mike Trout just seemed to predict that home run perfectly. But did anyone else notice him talking to someone in the dugout before the pitch? The cameras didn't show anyone there. What Trout didn't realize was that his supernatural coaching relationship was about to become national news. By the next morning, social media was exploding with theories about Trout's behavior. Video clips showed him apparently having conversations with invisible people, pointing to empty spaces and reacting to guidance that no one else could see. Mental health experts appeared on TV discussing the pressures of professional sports. Some fans worried about their hero's well-being, while others mocked him mercilessly. That night, Ruth appeared to Trout in his hotel room looking more serious than ever before. "Kid, we need to talk. This has gone further than I intended. People are starting to question your sanity, and that's not why I came back." Trout sat on the edge of his bed, emotionally exhausted from a day of fielding questions about his mental health. "So what do we do? I can't pretend you don't exist anymore. You've changed everything about how I play." What Babe Ruth revealed next would force Trout to make the most difficult decision of his career. "The lessons I've taught you, they're real and they're yours now. You don't need to see me to remember them. The connection to the game, the ability to feel rather than just think, that's inside you now. It always was. I just helped you remember." Ruth's form began to shimmer and fade. "It's time for me to go, kid. You've got what you need. But remember, baseball is more than statistics. It's about the joy, the passion, the connection between you and the game that's been played by millions before you." As Babe Ruth's ghost disappeared for the final time, Mike Trout realized that the greatest lesson the legendary slugger had taught him wasn't about hitting at all. It was about believing in himself. The next season, Trout hit .347 with 47 home runs, and he never saw another ghost. But sometimes, during his most crucial at-bats, he could swear he heard a faint voice whispering, "Trust your heart, kid."
Sometimes the greatest teachers appear when we need them most, even if they've been gone for nearly a century. Mike Trout's encounter with Babe Ruth's ghost reminds us that baseball's greatest secrets aren't found in statistics, but in the timeless connection between player and game. If this story gave you chills, don't forget to like and subscribe to The Baseball Story for more incredible tales from the diamond. What other legends might be watching over today's players?